Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Have you ever seen God show up in the unexpected? We moved just before the pandemic, and when we went to sign the documents for the house, I got a bad feeling. I was looking around at the house and thinking, this can't be the right place for us. It wasn't in the same condition our other house had been in. I worried about leaving the neighborhood that we were familiar with to move to an unfamiliar one. But then the pandemic hit, and we realized that we were close to so many resources we would not have been otherwise. It ended up being just the right fit for us. God works through the unexpected. Hey, this is Jen. You're listening to the Bible for Busy People, and this week we're talking about God's provision. Elijah is one of my favorite people in the Bible, both because his experiences are so epic, but also because he wrestled with pain in a really vulnerable way that we see through the scriptures. He seemed to go through something like depression, something that I've battled in my own life, and to see God show up for him in it is a precious reminder for me that God isn't shocked or dismayed at our mental health struggles. God sees, hears, understands, provides for us in those seasons, and walks through them with us. Today we're reading in 1 Kings 17, starting in verse 1. It says, Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. Powerful. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. What a powerful thing to be so in tune with God. My friend Hannah Brencher was deeply affected by this story and shared some inspiring thoughts about it in a blog post. She said God instructed him to hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan River. There, God promised to take care of him. The ravine's name comes from the Hebrew root harith or harith, meaning to cut away. It signifies a time of separation for Elijah, cutting away from ordinary circumstances, a time of isolation and hiddenness. God directs the ravens to feed Elijah, and this is symbolic for a lot of reasons. In ancient Near East times, according to the Bible Hub Topical Bible, ravens were associated with bad omens and desolation because they were scavenger birds. To the Jews, they were unclean for the same reason that they scavenged from dead animals. They are called detestable in Leviticus 11. There's a parallel here to the vision Peter had in Acts 10 before he goes to meet the Roman centurion Cornelius. When a voice told to kill and eat certain animals, Peter said he doesn't eat anything unclean, but the voice said, do not call anything impure that God has made clean. There's also a parallel to Jesus' words in Luke 12. Then Jesus said to his disciples, Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Brencher goes on to say, it's a powerful reminder that God is in the business of using unexpected elements, things we often overlook or people we might be tempted to write off. New graces and fresh mercies appear all the time, and it's essential to train our eyes to see them in the unlikely things, to encounter the miraculous amid the mud. I also find it interesting that ravens are associated in some cultures with transition, protection, or new beginnings. I wonder if ravens started to be viewed differently after this story became known. But wait, there is more provision to come. Starting in verse 7, it says, Sometime later the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him, to Elijah, Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink? As she was going to get it, he called, And bring me, please, a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord your God lives, she replied, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. Elijah said to her, Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said, but first make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. She went away and did as Elijah told her. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. This woman was from Zarephath in Zidon, which was Jezebel's hometown. Jezebel was set against all of the prophets of the Lord, including Elijah. And this woman would have also been Gentile, potentially a worshiper of Baal. Of course, she was affected by the drought like the others in the area. I can just imagine her desperation, possibly crying out to a God who didn't answer and readying herself to die. God sent Elijah to her. But in fact, the same word is used of her as the ravens. God directed both the ravens and her to provide for Elijah. The Hebrew word is savah, which means commanded, appointed, or send a message to. Both were unexpected choices. Also, the woman had to make a move to see the miracle. It didn't just miraculously show up in front of her. Elijah gave her the direction to bake some bread, and she did. She listened. This reminds me of the example with the manna. God provided just enough daily for the people so they continued to depend on God for the next day's meal. But also, it was a marvelous miracle in itself. I can imagine wrestling through this as the woman. Will there really be enough for tomorrow? What if God decides not to show up today? Those are the small steps of faith we take when we depend on God's provision. Later, we won't read it today, but God came through in another major way. The woman's son died, and after she cried out to Elijah, who cried out to God, the boy received his life back, and the woman fully believed Elijah and in God. It's a powerful story that God doesn't leave anyone out. God sees and hears and provides. Is there a time when God went above and beyond what you expected in his provision? Let that situation move you today as you recall how God provides in unexpected and generous ways. And I will talk with you again tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to The Bible for Busy People. If you need prayer or want to go deeper in your faith, visit our show notes. Will you take a moment to share with a friend and leave a review? It helps the Bible get into even more people's minds and hearts. Find more podcasts that will recharge you at purposely.com.